Intro. The United States, most of us know it. It controls a lot of the Western Hemisphere and beyond, really. One of the most influential countries simply due to its size and its economy. I don't really want to get into the economy of the United States for various reasons, but the geography today, because that's the interesting part. Before we start, we can see the 5 big areas in the United States: New England, the Southeast, the Midwest, the West, and the Southwest. Very easy to remember, but there's a lot more you can remember about these areas, especially when it comes to their traditions and stuff. There's also time zones, but those are really not useful. All you need to know is that Eastern Standard Time, or EST, is the only real time zone in the United States. The rest are delusional time zones. It's just not real. We're going to be going in the same direction they did when they manifested destiny, east to west, but first we start off at the northeast. This consists of literally mainly New England, New York, and all the way down to Maryland. All you need to remember in terms of state borders is New England to Washington, or if you're not familiar with American geography, New York to Washington. In terms of landmarks, we can name off all the cities. There's Boston, New York, Baltimore, New Jersey, and Washington, D.C. for the main ones. A lot more since you know. No railway system. Thank you, non-regulated high-speed railways. You're making nature more easy to condense in conversation. Other than cities, you can travel to New Hampshire and Vermont, where all the nature is. It's abundant in the northern half of the area, and it's very pretty if you ever go up there. It's full of really luscious forests and so much beautiful nature. There's rivers and there's less pollution, probably due to less people actually being up there as compared to like New Jersey. That's the difference between the nature part and the city part. Cities like Boston, New York, like New Jersey, cities like Atlantic City, they're somewhat walkable, but full of people. I mean, full of people considering these cities, really, mainly Boston and New York, are 2 of the most massive cities for American trade. There's rivers and there's a bunch of small towns up in the northeast. The northeast, in terms of the 5 regions, is the best one to live in overall. Best education, best quality of life, all the shebang up here. It's mainly just expensive to live in, but that's a price to pay, I guess. This area of the United States is also the original part. You have a lot of people there already, and it was where the original pilgrims landed when they came to America. You can definitely tell that the area has a lot of history just through the buildings in New England alone. There's also another cool tidbit of history information about the area, that being the metro system in Boston. Boston's metro system is the oldest and the most used in the Northeast mode of public transportation, because people mainly rely on it. It's like the European dream for anybody in the Western Hemisphere, but that's a discussion for another day. I'm kidding. Now going south towards the most forgettable place of America. I'm sorry, it's just true unless you live down there. It's the Southeast. If you ask any European to name states from the area, they just couldn't. They might be able to get Florida, or mainly Miami, but that's about it. It's like New England in the Northwest, where there's a lot of open land. The only problem is it's the majority of the states. Most of these states are just not memorable due to various reasons. That could be economic status, location, or just the people not really being the smartest. That third one is pretty common in these southern states. But again, a different conversation for a different day. That and the economic status of these states. A majority of their locations aren't near any major lakes or oceans. It makes sense why they're forgotten about. If you're not near an important ocean, you are what they call a highway state, basically. And a highway state is like Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. You get the idea. They're states that you travel into just to get to another state. They're like filler episodes in anime, but in the US. That's fully besides the point, because most of these states have good scenery. They're just focused too much on cars and infrastructure like that. A state can have good scenery, but to fully do that, You have to invest in public transportation like trains and buses instead of highways. That's a rare sight in any of these cities, as you might see a bus only for school down there. And the only city I could really see this happening in is somewhere like Miami, but let's be honest, it's Miami. I don't think many people willingly go to Miami and like it. The scenery you see in these states is around the same forests, but a little more tropical as you get closer to hurricane attractors like Florida and the Carolinas on the shore. There's a lot of beaches in states like Florida and some in states like Alabama and Mississippi. It surrounds the Gulf of Mexico, as this region plus Texas make up the coastline for the Gulf. These states are also the states that, other than the two Virginias, Florida and Arkansas, have the lowest minimum wage you can have in the country. This may be because of somewhat low house prices there, but that's probably going to change pretty soon. Next up we have the Midwest, since it's right above the Southeast. That's surely not confusing at all. You get really anywhere west between Ohio and North Dakota. That's one of the main things you can remember about this area. The line of states is the most boring borders, and they're big for no reason. You have North Dakota to Kansas, which is pretty much majority of highway states in some important cities, in these funny rectangles. This area is so empty when it comes to actually seeing people, mainly because it's where early settlers settled farms and had a bunch of land that took up so much land for no reason, acres and acres. That's why if you look more west, it's a lot of straight roads that are filled with radio connectors and electricity lines. Woo, it's because this is the empty no man's land version of the United States. This area would be perfect for trains to go parallel with the roads if people didn't want to drive. It's also more convenient to the people who want to go many places outside of states like Kansas and South Dakota. You can see resemblance of occupied states when you look at states like Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and any state really around the Great Lakes area. There you have a big cluster of people and industry because Columbus, Detroit, and Chicago are all right near each other. This would make it really easy to make sure people could get from one populated city in the United States to another, considering their close distance. Using high-speed rails, a connection would be made from Chicago to Columbus or Detroit. But we wouldn't do that. No, why would we? We could just do the alternative that makes people's lives more privatized. That'll come up later, so don't forget about that. The Southwest is a pretty short region compared to the other regions. It only has 4 states, which are all very big in their deserts, and all the other things. The main and only states in this region are Texas, Oklahoma, Arizona, and New Mexico. The 4 states that have Phoenix, Breaking Bad, nothing, 5 major cities because it's the size of like Germany or a whole country. Texas is the main point of the Southwest, clearly, just because it has 5 big cities and is the biggest state out of the 4. There's not too much to really mention about this area because all the scenery is the same throughout it. It's mainly desert and a blend of what Mexico is, considering how much influence there is down there from them. The deserts that are barren for the most part, just like the Midwest, could be used for trainways and other high-speed systems that would be more useful to the people in these areas. Otherwise, they have to take the highways, which could take longer and have a lot more traffic congestion compared to a train or something similar like to a Shinkansen in Japan. There are of course major cities, as most areas would, but you can tell what matters the most, and that's the access to water. In this case, we have Houston, which is the closest major city in this region to the Gulf of Mexico. This is one of 5 and the second most southern point in Texas. Texas is a really interesting state, was where the other major cities are placed, because you have them like an hourglass if you look on satellite view in Google Maps. The rest of Texas geography can be boiled down to 2 things: random cities and nothing south of San Antonio. Nothing really happens there, so it doesn't really matter, other than the fact that it makes up Texas's most southern point at the bottom. It's not full of too much that is relevant, but it is the farthest down point, so it's basically just Mexico at that point in the mainland US. As for the other deserts, we can see cities like Phoenix, granted not for long, but you can still see them right now. Temperatures climbing every year in the summer, and what seems like the most unbearable place to live is what you pay for. It's the area that you don't want to be in, and so there's nothing except the Grand Canyon. But that's the only landmark there. But wait, the Grand Canyon. Now for the final region of the mainland US, the West, which covers anything west of the Midwest but nothing that's in the Southwest. You get it. It's a vast array of states that, you guessed it, are highway states. The states that actually fully have people are all on the West Coast. States like California, Oregon somewhat, and Washington are all the most western states in the mainland US, and near the Pacific Ocean, and therefore water. Cities that are important in all the California cities, like LA, San Francisco, any other one, but also Seattle and the Northwest, make up this area. It does make sense that most of the important cities are in California due to it getting that many, 54 electoral votes alone in any election. Most of the cities are coastal cities, which makes sense, as this is where most stuff from Asia comes in. The main reason we have so many big cities in this area is because of the influence of who lives there and the easy access to the Pacific Ocean. They're the states that people go to for mainly coastal life, just because of the aesthetic that's usually associated with the states like California and the Pacific Northwest. It's an aesthetic that is mainly associated with things like beaches and surfing in California, and like living your best life that you could. Kind of like a millennial is what I think about. Meanwhile, in the Pacific Northwest, which is made up of Oregon and Washington, you mainly have like different aesthetics portrayed, like forests and coziness, as most of the land up there is forest. It's where you go to retire or something, like New Hampshire and New England. It's the equivalent. It's full of many different types of environment, mainly stuff like temperate rainforests and all the different tree-based environments. It gives it the life and aesthetic that it has today. As for the rest of the states, they can be broken down into two parts. The continuation of the Southwest, but just a little more north, or fields with nobody living in them. It's something that kind of needs filling, as again, it's full of highway states, which is pretty common for this part of the country. This is probably due to how much time it takes to actually get inside these states. It's far away from the ocean, so nobody really wants to live in these states because that's a far ways away from the water. And these states, considering they are highway states, are incredibly unwalkable or even able to bring you anywhere publicly. It's a shame because these regions of the United States is perfect for train travel and is so pretty to look at. The open field and the rest of the area makes it so nice to look at, especially at sunset, and would be the perfect view on a train. Now that we have the main regions of the United States covered, we can truly talk about the reasons why it is so bad and possible solutions for the problem, which is public transportation. It's been an issue for a while that, if implemented, would take a long time to come to fruition, since it would require changing the way cities are made in America. We all know the real reason people don't walk, and that's because they can't. They can't because of how most U.S. cities, with the exception of a few, are made with the right of the cars in mind and not the pedestrian. It's all about privatized modes of transportation that can get individual people to where they need to go faster and not think about other things like the environment. Since cars are what dominate the lives of Americans, it's easy to see that most city areas don't have sidewalks, or if they do, it acts more like a bike lane than anything else. It's all about regulations and the way cars are built, and the idea that sidewalks in most cities don't need to be near houses, and this causes cars to be used easier by the American people than something like a bus, because you can't wait for the bus in something like a bike lane. In most major US cities, walkability is something that is seen as extra, or not really ideal, just because these cities weren't focused around it. If you change the layouts of the city so that the pedestrians can walk more and have more leeway in how they travel, you can actually have cities like Boston everywhere in the country, where people take the public transportation they have there on a daily basis because it's just a better alternative, but that's just not an option in most cities. We are also a big country, but people always bring up points like we are too far apart to build trains to, and there's no way we could do that. But you also have to realize that the United States is about the same size as the Schengen zone in Europe, so a comparison can easily be made. If we think about each of the 50 states as the equivalent of a country in the Schengen zone, we get something that makes the idea of a high-speed transit more possible. On a map, you can also mark all the important cities that need to be put together into different groups of how important they really are by ranking them on a 1 to 5 scale. For this to be fully possible, like any good plan, it needs to be split into different parts and phases. For the parts, it would have to be the idea of sidewalks in cities and how many of these cities don't have the right regulations for them. They don't enforce housing areas to install sidewalks, so many streets in major cities and small towns have little to no sidewalks or anywhere to walk because the bike lanes are what make up their sidewalks, but those are really narrow in the US. Now, on to the phases of things like trains. Currently, there are buses that can bring you from one major location to another, like the Greyhound, for example, but the problem with buses are their time to get places and the fact that you are on the same road as cars and other traffic that could be heavily congested. So it usually isn't worth it most of the time because you'll just end up there later than if a train option was available. Now, in terms of trains, 2 different kinds would have to be made, those being something equivalent to a Shinkansen in speed, which was enough studying of the engineering behind it could be done. The Shinkansen shape and speed could help cover big distances between the cities and could actually make it faster for the American people to get places. If you build rails for a Shinkansen or something similar, like magnetic, which is the other kind that would have to be made, you have high-speed rails that go way faster than a car. With a car, you can go at max 90 miles per hour if you were going 5 above the highest speed limit, which is in Texas. But of course, that isn't the standard in most US states. It is way slower than going an average of 100 miles per hour in high-speed transit. For example, a train ride currently from Boston to New York would take almost 4 hours, which is an average speed of about 50 or a little more miles per hour considering the distance is 214 miles. With something like a Shinkansen, this could be brought down to less than an hour and a half, not including stops since there would be many, stopping for many towns. Phase 1 of this Shinkansen plan could easily include cities like Boston to New York, Miami to Tallahassee and Atlanta, and a loop between the 5 big cities in Texas. This would give the places a head start and also make sure they have access to public transportation that's useful and nothing in the middle of nowhere like in the highway states. There's one major player that is supposedly making good progress on high transport between 2 cities, that player being California, which is why I didn't mention them before. They currently have a plan to connect San Francisco and Los Angeles, which are 2 of the biggest countries in the state and the country. It makes sense to connect them considering how many people live in both. The only thing I would say should be added is a continuation of the line that runs to Portland and to Seattle. I would say other big Californian cities, but it looks like that is already covered in their plans. The only real thing that could be added was a way to get from San Francisco to Sacramento directly instead of taking one of the lines and then switching to another. It'd be easier to help get citizens from their state capital to a big city that is often visited. After the possible phase 1 of the other plan, not the California one, after that is complete, phase 2 is what would make these trains more useful to more Americans looking to travel outside of their nearest areas. This could be something like lines from Houston to Albuquerque or San Diego to Phoenix, basically just lines that would go out of states and have faster ways to get from capital to capital. Cities like Atlanta to Raleigh, or Raleigh to Washington, D.C. would give a lot of people access to these places that have a lot of people and are important. It would also be an easy way to connect the American people more than just their state, since many people don't take transport because airline tickets are expensive. Trains are cheaper than the airline tickets by a lot, and you can get a higher distance for a lower price, making it a worthwhile option. After the possible phase 2 is complete and all the major cities are connected, a possible plan that would be good is we can start to move the transit system to the aforementioned highway states. Cities like Topeka and St. Louis would be a popular stop since they are the biggest cities in the states that are traveled through just to get to bigger cities and states. This would also give people a reason to go there. After the possible phase 3, which was the aforementioned step, the tracks should be done, and the only thing that could be added is more optimized routes and better maintenance. Routes that go and get people to possible places they would want to go to faster, just so that they don't have to take a lot of trains and transfer lines, since that is a real issue with subways. After this is done, it'd be really up to the states and the cities to fund citywide metros, like Boston does, where they put $276,000 in it yearly. If this can be done, then a lot of cities could have improved systems built in and could have many different things like lower gas prices due to the supply and demand chart for car gas. And more people would be on trains and making a revenue that could help the economy. Most cities have enough to build a transport system like Boston. It just takes more trains and a little more funding and a better planning to make it better. This could be a big improvement to the American infrastructure if actually implemented correctly. It could be proven as to how we could make cities better in a less social and public environment instead of something that's private like cars. It'll also lead to a healthier America since people will be walking and being more active than sitting in a car just to go to a sitting 9 to 5 for the average United States citizen. Hawaii is probably on their own since they are, let's check, that far away from the United States. Alaska could be connected via the Canadian coastline on the west, considering it's just ice, but considering how things have been going between us lately, that's not looking like a real possibility anytime soon. That could come down later down the line, since nobody and a half lives in Alaska. But other than those two outliers, there's a lot that could be done to improve geography and the walkability of the United States, and also make sure the environment is clean. Make sure to do your part about that as well. Points finger at you. Please like and subscribe. Pretty please.